They had no idea she already owned everything. While her husband and his family laughed at her beside her father's casket, mocking her grief in front of everyone, she stayed silent. His mother whispered cruel words in his ear. The woman he was secretly seeing stood right behind him, smiling. Just days after losing the only person who ever truly loved her, Sarah Bennett walked into that funeral home in Chicago, her heart still broken, her father's last words still ringing in her ears. "Don't trust them, Sarah." She didn't understand what he meant back then, but she was about to find out. Marcus stood with his family in a tight circle, laughing like they were at a party instead of a funeral. They stared at her with cold, judging eyes, eyes that wanted to control her, eyes that thought she was nothing now that her father was gone. "She looks so pathetic," her sister whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "Her father probably left her with nothing," his mother added with a cruel smile. Sarah heard every single word, but she said nothing. She just stood there, trying to hold herself together. And then Veronica appeared, the woman Marcus called just a work friend. She slid her hand down his arm slowly and whispered something that made Sarah's knees go weak. "After today, you need to finally make your choice." Marcus didn't pull away from her touch. He didn't tell Veronica to stop. He didn't even look at his own wife. Instead, he walked straight towards Sarah, grabbed her hand way too hard, and hissed quietly so only she could hear, "Don't you dare embarrass me today." What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Sarah's father had already made his own choice, a choice written in legal documents her husband never even knew existed, a choice that would expose every lie, every betrayal, every bit of greed in one single moment. A moment so shocking, it would freeze Marcus and his entire family in place. Dear viewer, thank you for being here. If you're watching without subscribing, it's like watching Sarah stand alone in that funeral home with no one on her side. When you hit that subscribe button, you're standing with everyone who has ever been mocked, looked down on, or betrayed when they were at their weakest. Click it now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The sound of struggling breath filled the room like a warning sign. Sarah Bennett, 33 years old, rushed across the bedroom before panic could take over completely. Her father's chest rose unevenly, catching on each breath, and for one terrible second, she thought it might be his last. She placed her shaking hand over his, whispering soft, calming words until his breathing became steady again. Only then did she let herself breathe. The small lamp on the nightstand painted everything in a soft, warm glow, but the warmth felt fake, held together by habit instead of hope. Sarah gently adjusted the pillow under her father's head. She had done this same thing every single night for months, ever since his health fell apart. A small medical monitor hummed quietly beside the bed, its weak green lights blinking on and off. His wrist still had a faded hospital band on it, a reminder of how long she had been fighting to keep him comfortable at home instead of stuck in a hospital room. Sarah wasn't the type of woman who complained about things. She never had been. She lived a quiet life built on small sacrifices and loyalty to the people she loved. Growing up as the only child of Robert Bennett, she learned responsibility early. Her mother died when she was just 12 years old, and her father took on both parent roles without ever complaining. He taught her how to balance checkbooks, keep household records, and read legal contracts, not because he thought she would need them, but because he never wanted her to depend on anyone blindly. Memories blurred together, she sat beside him now. She remembered his calm, steady voice, teaching her how to sign her name properly, how to read the small print that most people ignored, how to stand firm when people tried to make her feel small or stupid. Back then, she thought he was just teaching her how to be an adult. Now she understood he had been teaching her how to protect herself. Her father, even while sick and weak, still held on to his dignity. She had learned that from him. Quiet strength, not loud anger or big displays of wealth. She hadn't grown up rich. Her father ran a small family business and lived simply. Over the years, everything he earned, every piece of property, every bank account, he placed carefully into arrangements she didn't understand fully. When she would ask about it, he would just smile and say, "You'll understand when you need to." He never bragged, he never showed off, but now she suspects he was planning something, something he wanted her to know about, something he had been guarding carefully. Tonight she read to him from an old letter she wrote when she was 16. He had kept it folded at the bottom of his drawer all these years. The ink was smudged from age, but he never threw it away. Her voice shook a little as she read it, remembering the girl she used to be, hopeful, sensitive, trusting. Her father's eyes opened slightly, weak but focused only on her. "Sarah," he whispered. The word came out fragile but urgent. She leaned closer, brushing a stray gray hair away from her forehead. "Yes, Dad, I'm right here." "Listen to me." His voice thinned like a thread about to break. "What do you mean? Protect what?" Robert Bennett's eyes shifted toward the bedroom doorway for just a moment, as if someone might be standing in the hallway outside listening, as if this house, which had always felt safe, suddenly had corners she needed to be careful of. Before he could answer, her phone buzzed loudly on the nightstand. The vibration cut through the silence like a rude knock on the door. Sarah reached for it slowly, hesitating. A text message from Marcus, her husband. He was 36 years old, charming to people on the outside, cold and short with her behind closed doors. "Come home early. My mother wants to talk to you again." The words made her chest feel tight. For months now, Sarah had been splitting her time between this house and the one she shared with Marcus, but most nights she stayed here with her father. Conversations with Marcus's mother felt like walking through a field full of hidden traps. She always found a way to remind Sarah that she wasn't good enough for their family, not elegant enough, not polished enough, not wealthy enough. Sarah didn't type anything back. She just stared at the screen until it went dark, her face sinking into something unreadable, something tired. Her father watched her with knowing eyes. He had seen the strain in their marriage long before she ever admitted it to herself. "Sarah," he whispered again, his voice barely there. She turned back quickly, gripping his hand tighter. "Yes, Dad, I'm right here." His fingers pressed weakly against hers. "Don't trust them, Sarah." The words cut through the air like a knife. Sarah went completely still. "Dad," she breathed, unsure if he meant Marcus's family, or someone else entirely. But his eyes had already closed, too drained from the effort of speaking. The room felt heavier now, like the shadows themselves had moved closer. Sarah held his hand even tighter, her heart beating with a new rhythm she didn't understand yet, an uneasy rhythm. Outside the bedroom, her phone buzzed again, longer this time, almost like it was warning her that Marcus's world and her father's world were about to crash together in a way she wasn't ready for. And somewhere toward the back of the house, she thought she heard a soft thud, like a side door closing quietly, a faint noise that didn't belong at this late hour. For a second, she froze, listening carefully, but the noise faded away, and the monitor's weak beeps filled the silence again. She told herself it was probably just the wind. She didn't know yet that it was the first sign someone else had started taking an interest in what her father had been protecting for her.
The laughter hit Sarah like a punch in the face the moment she unlocked the front door of the house she shared with Marcus. Loud, careless, completely out of place. She froze in the doorway, the sound pulling her out of the heavy thoughts she carried from her father's bedside. It was late, later than she had promised Marcus she would be home. She had stayed longer with their father after his breathing scare, making absolutely sure he was settled and safe before she left. Her clothes still carried the faint smell of his room, antiseptic mixed with old cologne. Marcus was sprawled on the couch, leaning back like his whole world was easy and light. He was 36 years old, tall, always dressed nicely, always polished when other people were watching. His smile was wide and bright, brighter than anything he had shown her in weeks. Sitting across from him was a woman Sarah recognized immediately. Veronica Hayes, 30 years old, introduced months ago as his friend from the office. She was stylish, confident, with a voice that moved across the room like smooth silk, and she looked far too comfortable in Sarah's home. Veronica laughed again, her hand lightly touching Marcus's knee before she noticed Sarah standing in the doorway. "Oh, Sarah!" Veronica jumped up, walking toward her with open arms. "It's been way too long." Her hug lasted a moment too long. Her perfume was strong enough to fill the air around them, a sharp, flowery scent that triggered a memory Sarah had pushed away. A flash, months earlier, Marcus coming home late one night, his shirt carrying that exact same perfume. Sarah had asked casually if he had stopped at a store or something. He answered too quickly. Probably someone at work hugged me or something. She told herself she was just being paranoid. She didn't want to be the jealous, suspicious wife. She trusted too easily. Now that scent felt like proof of something she didn't want to believe. Sarah gently pulled away from the hug. "I didn't know we were having company tonight." Marcus shrugged without even looking at her. "You came home late. We didn't think you'd care." Veronica smiled and sat back down, this time closer to Marcus than before. Before Sarah could say anything else, another voice came from the dining area. "Late again?" Marcus's mother, Patricia, stepped forward. She was 61 years old, with sharp eyes that always seemed to be judging. She crossed her arms like Sarah had committed some kind of crime. Sarah kept her voice calm and steady. "I was helping my father. He had a really bad night. His breathing almost stopped completely." Patricia rolled her eyes so dramatically it was almost theatrical. "Yes, yes, we know. Everything is always about your father, isn't it?" Sarah swallowed the hurt. She didn't want to fight. Not here, not now. She was too exhausted to explain hospice care and dying parents to people who clearly didn't care. She set her bag down on the side table. "I'm going upstairs to change." But as she started climbing the stairs, she heard Veronica giggle softly behind her. "This house is nice and cozy, but it could be so much better with the right woman's touch." Marcus laughed. "That's exactly what I keep saying." Sarah's hand tightened hard on the stair railing. She forced herself to keep walking up, refusing to turn around and look back. Her chest felt tight with something she couldn't name. Fear, anger, confusion, maybe all three twisted together. Inside the bedroom, she sat on the edge of the bed and let herself breathe, deep, shaky breaths that she had been holding in. She had met Veronica before. It was never a long visit, always quick and brief, always with Veronica acting a little too warm and friendly with Marcus, a little too casual with Sarah, like Sarah was just a guest in their own marriage. Was she imagining things again? No, something was deeply, seriously wrong. She lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. Her father's fading voice echoed in her mind. "Don't trust them, Sarah." Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "You could at least try to be polite to our guests." That was all he had to say. After leaving her alone downstairs for hours, after letting his mother scold her like a child, after laughing with another woman while her father was lying in bed struggling to breathe. She put the phone down without replying. Minutes passed. Then she heard footsteps heading upstairs. 2 sets of footsteps, not one. Light, feminine ones alongside heavier ones. Sarah sat up, listening carefully. Whispers drifted through the hallway. First, Marcus's voice, low and annoyed. "Just give it some time. She won't cause any trouble." Then Veronica's voice, softer but confident. "But I said you'd talk to her soon. I'm getting really tired of waiting, Marcus." Sarah's heartbeat pounded hard against her ribs.
The footsteps moved past her door and stopped near the guest room. A door clicked softly closed. Then Veronica's voice again, barely louder than a whisper, but clear enough through the thin walls. "She won't be in the picture much longer anyway." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The hallway went completely silent. She didn't move, she didn't blink, she didn't even breathe for a full second. Her father's warning echoed again. Don't trust them. Time seemed to crawl. At some point later, when the whispers had stopped and the house had sunk into a heavy, fake quiet, Sarah heard the front door creak open downstairs. Then it closed gently, carefully. Soft footsteps left across the porch, followed by the faint sound of a car engine starting and pulling away. It sounded like someone leaving without wanting to be seen or heard. A hint, quiet but sharp, that something about tomorrow would change everything. Sarah stared at the ceiling through the darkness, torn between going straight back to her father's side immediately and collapsing from pure exhaustion. She didn't know it yet, but by morning, both worlds, her father's and Marcus's, would crash together in a way she could never undo.
The phone ringing yanked Sarah out of a shallow, restless sleep. Her heart jumped before she even looked at the screen. It was the night nurse who helped with her father. "Sarah, I'm so sorry to wake you," the woman said gently. "His breathing is getting much worse. I think you should come right now." That was all it took. Sarah grabbed her keys with shaking hands and drove through the half-empty streets of Chicago. The city was still dark and quiet. By the time she burst through the door into her father's room, the door slammed hard against the wall. The violent sound broke the fragile silence where her father lay resting. His chest jolted, his breathing caught in a painful gasp. Sarah rushed to his bedside, grabbing his hand with both of hers. "Dad, I'm here, she whispered urgently, fighting back the panic rising in her throat. His eyelids fluttered, struggling to open. Robert Bennett, 68 years old, once strong and sharp-minded, now looked as fragile as the thin sheets covering his body. The medical monitor beside him beeped irregularly. Each sound was a reminder that time was slipping away faster than she could hold on to it. Sarah lowered her face close to his so he could see her clearly through his weak eyes. "I'm not leaving you tonight," her voice cracking with emotion. The intensity in the room slowly softened into something quieter, something heavier. Sarah sat down carefully, adjusting his blanket, wiping sweat from his forehead with a cool cloth. She knew every movement now, every sign of discomfort, every shift in his breathing pattern. Taking care of him had become her entire world these past months. Anytime she tried to spend longer at Marcus's house, guilt dragged her right back here. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. She didn't want him to see her fall apart. He blinked slowly, his eyes holding a silent apology, an apology for leaving her too soon. "Sarah," his voice was so thin it was almost lost in the air. "I'm right here, Dad," she whispered back. His breathing steadied slightly, just enough for him to study her face, enough for a flicker of memory to spark in both of them. Without warning, the room began to fill with echoing flashes of their shared past, rising like soft waves washing over her. Sarah, at 5, sitting on Robert's lap, learning how to write her name, his warm, strong hand guiding her smaller one. "That's it, slow and steady. Your name means something important. Never sign it carelessly." Sarah, at 12, right after her mother passed away, Robert sitting beside her with 2 cups of warm milk. "You are stronger than you realize," he whispered softly into her hair. Sarah, at 20, learning how to read financial forms and legal documents, Robert pointing at each line with his finger. "People will try to confuse you on purpose, Sarah. Always know what belongs to you." Robert sealing a thick envelope, writing carefully on the front in his neat handwriting, "For Sarah only." He locked it inside a folder she didn't know existed, then slid that folder into a locked briefcase he kept hidden in his study. The present moment blurred together with the warmth of each memory. Sarah's grip on his hand tightened. "Dad, why did you teach me all of that?" she whispered, finally asking a question she had never dared to ask before. Robert exhaled shakily. His eyes moved toward the dresser, as if remembering something hidden there, something important. Then he looked back at her with a seriousness she hadn't seen in years. "Sarah," he said softly, "Marcus's family, once what's ours." Her stomach tightened into a knot. He lifted a trembling hand, brushing her arm gently, as if trying to pass his strength into her. "I've kept everything in your name, every property, every account, because I knew one day you would need protection from them." Sarah shook her head gently, trying to calm him down. "Dad, you should rest. You don't have to think about any of that right now." But his expression sharpened despite the pain he was in. "No, listen to me." His voice grew more urgent. "Your husband, his mother, they are not what they pretend to be. I saw their real intentions long before you noticed the signs. They came to me more than once asking questions about my business, my properties, like they were already counting what would be theirs one day." Sarah's stomach dropped into his stomach. She remembered Veronica's whisper from earlier that night. She won't be in the picture much longer anyway. She had tried to dismiss it, push it away, but now her father's words dug right into that same fear. Robert squeezed her hand with surprising strength for someone so sick. "You must protect what I've protected for you." His eyes watered, not from sickness, but from deep worry. "I trust you more than anyone in this world," he whispered, echoing the same words he had told her throughout her childhood. Then his breathing changed suddenly, a sharp hitch, a painful choke. "Dad!" Sarah stood up quickly, her own breath fleeing her chest. "Dad, talk to me. What is it?" He struggled to lift his head slightly off the pillow. He tried to speak one more word, but only a weak rasp escaped his lips. Sarah's hands shook so badly she could barely press the emergency call button for the nurse. She reached for her phone with her other hand, tears blurring her vision completely. She knew the ambulance would come, but some part of her already understood they might be too late. And then his eyes widened, not in fear, but in warning. He looked past her, toward the bedroom doorway. Sarah turned sharply, looking behind her. The hallway was empty, or had someone just slipped out of sight? She heard hurried footsteps moving quickly further down the corridor, then the sound of a door latch clicking. A second later, somewhere outside the house, a car engine started, soft and quick, as if someone was leaving before being noticed. In the stillness that followed, Robert Bennett's last breath trembled through the room, and something inside Sarah broke and hardened at the exact same time.
3 days later, the world moved on as if nothing had happened. But Sarah hadn't. She barely stepped into the funeral home before it hit her, a wave of harsh whispers that sliced through the air like sharp glass. It wasn't grief. It wasn't sympathy. It was pure judgment. Dozens of eyes followed her, tracking her every step as if she were a stranger walking into the wrong room. The air felt thick and heavy with unspoken opinions and gossip. Her father's portrait stood at the front of the room, framed beautifully, gentle and proud, but the warmth she once felt around him didn't reach her here in this cold space. The intensity of the moment forced her to stand completely still. She gripped the edge of a wooden chair just to keep herself standing upright. Then she saw them. Marcus and his family, grouped together in a corner like a cluster of polished statues, smirking, whispering, watching her instead of honoring her father. Marcus, 36 years old, looked freshly pressed in his expensive black suit, like he was attending an important business meeting instead of a funeral. His mother, Patricia, sat beside him with her usual cold expression frozen on her face. Marcus's younger sister, Nicole, was there too, chewing gum loudly with zero respect, and leaning slightly behind Marcus as if she had every right to stand there, was Veronica, the woman who was supposedly just a work friend. Her stomach twisted into painful knots. The whispers weren't even truly quiet. They were the kind of low voices people used when they wanted to be heard, but still pretend they were being discreet and polite. "She looks absolutely pathetic," Nicole said, loud enough for two nearby guests to glance over uncomfortably. Patricia added with a smug smile, "Her father probably left her nothing anyway. That man never had any real money to speak of." Marcus didn't stop them. He didn't defend his wife. Instead, he smirked like he was enjoying the show, like he had already decided exactly how this day would end. Sarah tried to breathe normally. She tried to focus on her father's photo, his gentle smile, the one that always told her she wasn't alone in this world. But the voices kept pulling her back into the storm around her. "Marcus deserves someone who isn't such a burden," Patricia said, lifting her chin high. "Someone like—" She leaned her eyes directly to Veronica. She leaned in toward Marcus's ear, her lips almost touching it. "You could do so much better than her." Her voice was low and poisonous, meant only for him to hear. Sarah's chest tightened painfully. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him. He didn't even look ashamed or guilty. He seemed entertained by it all. Veronica stepped closer to him, touching his arm as if the entire room was watching them. Her fingertips slid down his sleeve in a slow, deliberate movement, too familiar to be innocent. She leaned in toward Marcus's ear, her lips almost touching it. "After the funeral, you need to finally make your decision." Sarah's heart throbbed painfully inside her chest. It wasn't just the touch, it wasn't just the whisper. It was the perfume, that same sharply sweet, flowery scent she'd found on Marcus's jacket months ago. That same smile she noticed when he came home late so many nights. That same voice she heard barely contained in the hallway 2 nights before her father died. Everything clicked into place. All the moments she had brushed off as paranoia, all the doubts she had pushed down deep inside, they all collided into a truth she could no longer hide from or deny. Her knees felt weak, the world around her blurred at the edges. She steadied herself against the side of a wooden pew as memories hit her like quiet flashes of lightning. Marcus coming home late, smelling like perfume. Veronica brushing lint off his shirt with gentle, intimate hands. Marcus laughing in the living room with her, while Sarah stood in the doorway, completely invisible. Veronica's whisper upstairs, "She won't be in the picture much longer." Her father's last desperate warning, "Don't trust them, Sarah." Sarah swallowed hard, forcing the tears back down. She would not fall apart here, not in front of them, not in front of people who were just waiting and hoping for her to crumble. She walked slowly to the front of the room, where her father's portrait stood on an easel. She touched the wooden frame lightly, whispering inside her heart, "I'm sorry you have to see me like this, Dad." For a brief moment, the room quieted down slightly. A soft memory settled over her. The night she sat with her father, reading to him, talking, listening to his wisdom. His voice echoed gently in her mind. "Strength isn't loud, Sarah. It's steady and quiet." She exhaled slowly, trying to hold on to that strength. Then she heard footsteps approaching behind her, heavy, impatient ones. Marcus grabbed her hand, not gently, Not lovingly, his grip was rough and tight, as if he owned her skin, her choices, her grief itself. He leaned close, his voice low and sharp like a knife. "Don't dare embarrass me today." His words crashed into her like a freezing cold wave. Embarrass him? This was her father's funeral, the man who raised her alone after her mother died, the man who protected her his whole life, and Marcus wanted her to behave, to perform for him? Sarah pulled her hand slightly, trying to free herself from his grip, but Marcus's fingers only pressed harder, digging into her skin. Her father's warning whispered through her memory like a ghost. "Don't trust them, Sarah." She tried again to pull away, but Marcus's fingers only pressed harder, digging into her skin. His mother glanced over with thinly hidden annoyance, as if Sarah was causing a scene. Veronica watched with quiet satisfaction in her eyes, like a spectator who already knew exactly how this scene was supposed to end. And then, suddenly, a hush fell over the entire room. Someone new had entered the funeral home. Sarah turned slightly, her breath catching when she recognized the dark suit and solemn expression. Her father's lawyer. Mr. Harrison walked towards her, slowly, deliberately, carrying a sealed folder under his arm. And his eyes were locked directly at Sarah, as if he knew something the others didn't. Like he was carrying a message her father never got to finish, a message that would break everything wide open. Sarah shut the bedroom door behind her with force, her breath unsteady, her hands trembling so badly she had to grip the dresser edge just to stay upright. The humiliation from the funeral still burned inside her like a fire. Marcus's cruel grip, Veronica's whisper, Patricia's smirk, all of it stacked on top of her grief like heavy weights crushing her chest. She had come straight back to her father's house after the funeral, claiming she needed to sort through his belongings. Marcus hadn't argued or tried to stop her. He was too busy speaking in low, secretive tones with his mother and Veronica near where the lawyer stood. The moment she stepped into her father's room, the noise and chaos of the funeral hall felt miles away. But something else burned inside her too, her father's warning. "Don't trust them, Sarah." The intensity of his voice, so weak and yet so urgent, echoed in her mind until it drowned out every other thought. She forced herself to move, to breathe, to do anything except completely fall apart. She crossed the room, heading toward the wooden chair beside her father's bed. She sank onto it slowly, letting the stillness of the room wrap around her like a cold blanket. Everything in this room held her father's presence, the faint scent of his cologne, the stack of books he never got to finish reading, the small framed photo of her mother on the nightstand, the briefcase sitting in the corner that she remembered from childhood but had never seen opened. Sarah brushed her hand across the soft quilt on his bed, remembering the calm nights she spent right here, reading to him, talking about old memories, laughing together through the pain. But now, she felt something different, something that had been growing inside her since the funeral began. A shift, a spark, a quiet anger forming underneath all the sadness. She began gathering his belongings with gentle, careful hands, organizing them into small piles on the bed. Each object carried a story. His reading glasses, the watch he had worn for decades, the pen he used to sign every important document. Then she noticed something wedged behind a stack of books on the second shelf. An envelope, cream-colored, unopened, and written in her father's careful, neat handwriting. For Sarah only. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she picked it up, running her thumb along the sealed edge as if she were touching something sacred and precious. She opened it with trembling fingers, afraid the paper might fall apart if she rushed. Inside was a folded letter, handwritten in blue ink.
Sarah unfolded it carefully, her heart pounding. The first line stole her breath completely. "My dear Sarah, if you are reading this, it means I have left you sooner than I ever wanted to." Her throat tightened painfully. She blinked away tears and kept reading. "I need you to know that I've made sure your future is safe and secure. Everything I built, everything I protected my whole life, all of it is yours. You will understand the full details very soon." Her hand shook as she turned the page over. "There are people around you who are not what they pretend to be. Do not let Marcus's family anywhere near any legal documents. They have always wanted control over you, not love. I have already signed the final version of my will with Mr. Harrison. He knows exactly what to do." Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. Her father had known. He had seen through them all long before she ever did. Another flash of memory suddenly surfaced, a conversation she had completely forgotten until this very moment. Sarah sitting at the kitchen table years ago, her father sipping tea slowly as he watched her with careful eyes. "Remember this, sweetheart," he said softly. "Greedy people always reveal their true selves during funerals. That's when their masks fall off completely." She didn't understand what he meant back then. Now she did, perfectly. Sarah pressed the letter against her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks, not just from grief, but from clarity, from understanding. Her father had been protecting her even in his final days. He had been preparing her for the very moment she was facing right now. She wiped her tears away and reached for her phone with shaking hands. She called the only person who could answer the questions burning inside her, the family lawyer. He picked up on the first ring, as if he had been waiting for her call. "Mr. Harrison?" Sarah whispered into the phone. "I found a letter from my father. He said you would explain everything to me. He mentioned the will." There was a long pause on the other end, a heavy pause, the kind that held secrets. Then his voice came through, low and steady. "Sarah, I'm very glad you found that letter. Your father asked me specifically to wait until after the funeral before we read anything official. You need to come to my office tomorrow morning. There are things you don't know yet." Her pulse quickened. "What things?" He exhaled slowly, as if carefully choosing his words. "Things your father kept hidden to protect you. The will, the changes he made to it, and another private message he left with me, separate from the one you're holding right now." Sarah's fingers tightened around the phone. Before she could ask anything more, he said softly but seriously, "And whatever happens tonight, do not let anyone near your father's documents or that briefcase in his room. Marcus's family has already been asking questions they have absolutely no right to ask." The line went silent for a moment. Outside the bedroom door, a floorboard creaked, slow, deliberate, as if someone was standing just beyond the closed door, listening. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. She turned her head sharply toward the doorway, heart pounding hard, the letter still clutched tightly in her hand. Someone knew more than they should, and tomorrow, when the will was finally read out loud, they would all find out exactly what Robert Bennett had done to protect his daughter.
The morning exploded with noise before Sarah even opened her eyes. Doors slammed throughout the house. Voices clashed loudly in the hallway. Footsteps stomped across the floor like a small storm circling outside her bedroom door. Sarah shot upright in bed, heart racing wildly. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered her father's house, the same house where she had held his hand during his last breath, the same house where she had found his letter, the same house where she had stayed the night after the funeral, ignoring all of Marcus's angry calls. "Sarah!" Marcus's voice thundered through the door like an explosion. "Get dressed now. We're leaving in 1 hour." Her breath caught in her throat. The force in his tone didn't sound like a husband speaking to his wife.
It sounded like a man who believed he had everything under complete control. She opened the door slowly, carefully. Marcus stood there, already dressed in a dark suit, hair slicked back perfectly, jaw clenched tight with impatience. Behind him hovered Patricia, his mother, arms crossed firmly, chin raised high, wearing a black dress she somehow made look judgmental and accusatory. Beside them, to Sarah's complete shock, was Veronica, dressed more like she was going to an expensive brunch than a serious legal meeting. She held a small designer handbag and smiled sweetly, too sweet, too confident, too comfortable in a situation where she absolutely didn't belong. Sarah froze for a moment, not expecting to see Veronica there at all. Marcus noticed her confused expression immediately. "She's coming with us," he said quickly, defensively. "She's been supporting me while you've been too distracted to care about anything." Distracted? Taking care of her dying father? Sarah said nothing out loud. If she opened her mouth right now, she wasn't sure silence would survive. She thought back to Mr. Harrison's voice from the night before. "Your father asked that everyone who might try to influence you be present when we read the will." It made perfect sense now why Marcus was so eager and pushy. He thought the reading was about him. He thought he was about to inherit something. Veronica stepped forward, touching Marcus's arm gently, deliberately. "We're all here for you," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. "This meeting is going to be stressful. You shouldn't have to go through it alone." Patricia nodded firmly, as if Veronica were already the daughter-in-law she approved of and wanted. "Exactly right. Today is extremely important. Your father left behind a mess, and we all deserve to know how much of it affects our family." Sarah's breath tightened in her chest. Our family? Us? Her father owed them absolutely nothing, but she swallowed her anger down. This was not the moment to fight with people who had already shown their greed in every possible way. She dressed silently in the bathroom, choosing a plain black blouse and dark slacks. The mirror reflected tired eyes staring back at her. But there was also something new in them now, something different. Resolve. While getting ready, her mind replayed the night before, the letter she had read, the line that said, "Everything I built, all of it, is yours." The calm, practical tone Mr. Harrison used when he told her they would meet today. On his advice, she had also spoken briefly with another lawyer in his firm late last night. The divorce papers now sitting in her purse were quiet proof that she was finally done being blind to the truth. The drive to the lawyer's office was heavy with tension. No one spoke a single word. Adam stared out the window, tapping his foot impatiently across the floor. Veronica kept glancing at Marcus, smiling softly whenever she met her eyes. Patricia inspected her manicured nails, completely relaxed like a queen waiting to claim her kingdom. Sarah kept her gaze fixed straight on the road ahead, her father's words echoing quietly inside her mind. "Protect what I've protected for you." When they finally arrived, Mr. Harrison, a calm, dignified man in his early 60s, greeted them at the office entrance. He knew Sarah well. He had served her father faithfully for over 30 years. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, to Sarah first, with a respectful nod that made her feel seen and valued. Then, he paused when he saw Marcus's family trailing behind her like an entourage. "And they are here as well?" he asked carefully, raising an eyebrow. Marcus stepped forward confidently before Sarah could answer. "Of course we're here. This concerns all of us. We're family, and Veronica is a very close friend who's been helping me through this difficult time." Veronica offered a polite, practiced smile, as if she belonged there. Mr. Harrison gave a polite but thin smile of his own. Mr. Bennett specifically requested in writing that the will be read with everyone present who might try to influence his daughter's decisions. He said, and I quote, "every person who might try to manipulate her." Sarah's breath steadied. Her father had planned this exact moment.
He knew exactly who would try to twist things when he was gone. They followed the lawyer down a hallway and into a large conference room with a long wooden table. A thick folder sat at the center, along with a small stack of sealed envelopes. Marcus sat down at the head of the table without asking permission. Veronica took the seat directly next to him, crossing her legs gracefully. Patricia sat on his other side, looking smug and satisfied. Sarah quietly sat at the far end of the table, directly opposite the lawyer. She didn't need to sit close to them. She didn't need to be loud or demanding. Her father had already prepared the truth for this moment. Patricia leaned back in her chair with a smug expression. "Finally," she said with satisfaction, "we'll be rewarded for tolerating her father all these years." Veronica smirked, tilting her head slightly. "Long overdue, if you ask me." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her face calm and neutral. She rested her hand lightly on her purse, feeling the folded weight of the divorce papers inside. Whether Marcus inherited anything or not, he would not be staying in her life. That decision was already made. Mr. Harrison opened the thick folder slowly. The room went completely still. His eyes moved deliberately across the table until they reached Sarah. "There is something I must read first," he said clearly. Marcus leaned forward eagerly. "Just get to the part about the inheritance and assets." Mr. Harrison ignored him completely. He lifted a sealed document marked with Robert Bennett's handwriting. "Before anything else," he said, his voice steady and unwavering, "Mr. Bennett left a private message for his daughter to be read out loud in front of all of you." Every single person at the table stiffened. Marcus's hand stopped tapping. Veronica's smile froze on her face. Patricia's eyes narrowed dangerously. And Sarah felt her heartbeat surge with anticipation. The lawyer carefully broke the seal. Inside was a letter her father had written with the same careful hand he used for everything important in his life. As he unfolded it, Sarah felt the air shift around her. Something was coming. Something her father wanted her to hear first, in front of everyone.
The room cracked open with tension the moment Mr. Harrison unfolded the letter. Not slow or gentle, but sharp, like a blade being drawn across the air. Sarah's breath caught. Marcus's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. Veronica straightened in her seat, suddenly alert. Patricia's lips pinched into a thin, tight line. Mr. Harrison lifted his eyes, steady and unreadable. "This," he said clearly, "is the message your father insisted be read before the will." He began to read aloud. "To my beloved daughter, Sarah." The room fell silent instantly. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Veronica crossed her arms defensively. Marcus stared straight ahead, as if pretending the words weren't directed at his wife. "You have been my greatest comfort, my peace, my pride. Everything I built was always meant for you." Sarah blinked hard, tears burning at the edges of her eyes. Even now, even gone, her father's voice felt like home. But the rest of the room was cracking apart at the seams. Mr. Harrison continued reading. "I changed my will months ago after seeing things I hoped I would never have to witness." Patricia's eyes snapped sharply toward Marcus. Marcus stiffened in his chair. Veronica swallowed hard. Sarah didn't move. She didn't speak. Her heart pounded, but her face remained completely calm. She remembered her father's warnings, his shaken voice, his fear. Mr. Harrison read on. "I saw the truth of the people around you. I saw the cruelty, the greed, the complete disrespect shown toward you, even while you cared for me with every part of your heart." Patricia bristled. "He misunderstood. He was sick and confused." Mr. Harrison raised a hand firmly. "Let me finish, please." He unfolded the last page. "Once Marcus spoke about me as if I were nothing but a walking wallet." A loud gasp escaped from someone standing by the door, one of the junior staff members.
Marcus's face drained of all color, his mouth opened but no words came out. Sarah's heart tightened painfully. A memory flashed through her mind, her father lying weakly in bed one afternoon, weeks before he died. Voices drifting in from the hallway outside, Marcus and Patricia speaking, thinking he was asleep or couldn't hear them. "You don't need to worry. When he's gone, everything falls into our hands anyway. He's just a walking wallet at this point." Sarah hadn't heard those words herself back then, but her father had, and it broke his heart. Back in the present moment, the lawyer continued reading the final lines. "After hearing that, I made my final decision." A long pause filled the room, thick, suffocating. Then, with calm finality, Mr. Harrison read the last sentence. "Therefore, I leave my entire estate, every account, every property, and every company share that remains under my ownership to my daughter, Sarah Bennett, and to her alone." The room fell into absolutely stunned silence. Sarah didn't move. She sat perfectly still, breath trembling, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Marcus lurched to his feet, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. "This has to be a mistake," he shouted. Mr. Harrison didn't even flinch. "There is no mistake," he said calmly. "Mr. Bennett transferred most assets into Sarah's name long before his passing, and he confirmed all remaining rights in this final will. I updated and filed the documents myself, personally." Marcus had never bothered to read the documents Robert had sent him over the years. He had never asked real questions. Until this exact moment, he had absolutely no idea his wife already legally owned almost everything he had been counting on. Veronica's smile vanished completely. Her hands gripped the armrests until her knuckles turned white. Margaret slammed her hand down hard on the table. "This can't be legal." "It is completely legal," Mr. Harrison replied calmly, but firmly. "The documents were signed months ago, properly witnessed and officially filed. Your son had plenty of time to ask questions. He chose not to ask them." Marcus's breath turned quick and shallow. For the first time in his life, he looked truly afraid. Sarah watched him quietly. And in that moment, something inside her settled. Something strong. Something her father always believed she had deep inside. Mr. Harrison continued speaking about legal procedures, final expenses, and transfer dates, but Sarah didn't hear most of it. Her focus sharpened to one cold, steady line of thought. Marcus had used her. His family had mocked her. Veronica had stood beside him like a woman claiming territory that was never hers. And her father, her only real protector, had been right all along. Marcus leaned closer to Sarah, his voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. "You know I need this," he whispered harshly, desperately. "Don't ruin my life." Sarah didn't answer him. Instead, she reached into her purse with calm, deliberate movements. She pulled out a white envelope, thin, crisp, marked with her attorney's letterhead. The papers had been drafted overnight, using everything she had finally allowed herself to admit and accept. Then she slid the envelope across the table toward Marcus. His hand hovered above it, confused and nervous. "What is this?" he asked. Sarah looked at him with calm, unshakable strength. "Read it," she said simply. He opened it with trembling fingers. His eyes widened in complete shock. "Divorce papers!" Silence crashed over the room like a massive tidal wave. Veronica's jaw dropped open. Patricia gasped sharply, loudly. Marcus's fingers trembled as he held the papers. Sarah stood up slowly, gracefully, and before leaving the room, she said softly but clearly, "I won't be used anymore." The room froze completely. But as she stepped into the hallway, she heard something behind her. A quiet voice. "Emily," Mr. Harrison called gently, "there's one more document your father left for you. We'll discuss it when you're ready." Something shifted in the air again, a hint of an even bigger truth waiting just ahead.
Sarah barely made it 3 steps down the hallway before she heard the thunder of footsteps racing after her. "Sarah, wait!" Marcus's voice cracked with panic, something she hadn't heard from him in years. He grabbed her wrist hard, breathless, desperate, completely stripped of the confidence he had shown just minutes ago. But Sarah didn't flinch. She turned slowly, her eyes calm, steady, almost cold. "We can fix this," Marcus said, his voice shaking badly. "You don't have to do this. We can figure everything out together. I just need some time." Sarah looked at him with a softness that wasn't affection anymore. It was pity. "Fix what, Marcus?" asked Sarah quietly. "Who were you planning to fix things with last night? Me or Veronica?" His jaw dropped open, his face drained completely of color. Caught. For a moment, heavy silence stretched between them, undeniable, suffocating. Marcus stuttered, scrambling. I don't know what you think you heard." Sarah stepped closer until her eyes were just inches from him. Her voice was a whisper, but every word cut clean through him. "I heard enough." His grip on her wrist loosened. Panic flickered raw and real across his face, like a man watching the life he had built crumble beneath him. Before he could speak again, a sharp ringtone echoed down the hallway. Veronica appeared from the conference room doorway, phone already in her hand. Her expression was irritated, not devastated or concerned. She answered without even glancing at Marcus. Her voice softened instantly. "Oh, it's you. Hi." She paused, listening. "Yes, I told you already I'm leaving that whole situation behind me. No, he won't have anything soon. It's completely fine. Yes, I'm ready whenever you are." Sarah watched Marcus's face twist in shock and pain. Veronica hung up the phone and turned toward them, straightening her blouse and forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes at all. "Well, I guess this is the perfect time to be honest." Sarah stayed completely still, but Marcus stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Veronica, what was that phone call?" She sighed dramatically, as if annoyed by the question. "Honestly, Marcus, I can't keep pretending anymore. You said we'd have access to real money once your father-in-law passed away. You said we'd be comfortable and secure." Her eyes flicked toward Sarah with cold indifference. "But now?" She shrugged. "You don't have anything. I have an offer from someone who can actually take care of me properly." Marcus stared at her, completely stunned. "You're leaving me?" he choked out. Veronica lifted her designer purse from the nearby table with smooth, practiced movements. "Marcus, be serious. You're not useful to me anymore." The hallway went deathly still. Sarah didn't move. She didn't need to say a word. Every truth she had quietly suspected was breaking open right in front of her without her lifting a single finger. Veronica walked past Marcus as if he were a complete stranger. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. Each step was another wound. At the doorway, she paused just long enough to add one final blow. "Next time, don't promise things you can't deliver." And then she left, just like that. Marcus collapsed back against the wall, hands gripping his head, breathing hard and ragged. He looked utterly destroyed. Destroyed by his own greed, his own betrayal, his own lies. Sarah watched him silently, her face unreadable. This wasn't victory. This was simply truth revealing itself. Patricia's voice suddenly shattered the silence. "Marcus, what have you done?" She stormed down the hallway, eyes blazing with fury, her elegant posture completely replaced with raw anger. "You idiot! You let everything slip through your fingers. This should have been ours, everything. We tolerated her father for years because we thought—" She stopped abruptly. Sarah stared directly at her. Patricia froze mid-sentence.
The words hung in the air like poison gas. We tolerated her father. The truth, the greed, the arrogance, it was all out now, exposed completely. Patricia grabbed Marcus's arm roughly, shaking him. "Fix this! You have to fix it now!" Marcus looked broken, his eyes red, his voice cracked. "I tried, Mom, but she won't help us." Patricia turned desperately to Sarah, her tone suddenly shifting to fake sweetness. "Sarah, please, think of the family. We're all you have left." Sarah's voice cut through her pleading like a knife. "I did think of family, for years." Patricia faltered, her mouth opening and closing uselessly. Before the argument could continue, Mr. Harrison approached calmly from the conference room, steady and professional. "Mr. Carter," he said to Marcus firmly, "your father-in-law made very clear legal arrangements before his passing." Marcus stood up straighter, a flicker of desperate fire returning to his eyes. "I still have rights as her husband." Mr. Harrison's expression didn't change at all. "No," he said gently, but very firmly. "You have no legal claim whatsoever to Mr. Bennett's estate. Everything was transferred to Sarah lawfully, and the will confirms it completely." The hallway fell into heavy silence. Marcus stared at the lawyer, helpless, shaking, disbelieving. Sarah stepped back slightly, her breath slow and steady. Mr. Harrison turned to her kindly. "For now," he said quietly, "let's focus on settling your father's final affairs properly. The divorce proceedings and any further legal action will be handled through the courts." Sarah nodded firmly. Her world was shifting dramatically, but for the first time in years, it was shifting in her favor. Later, as she waited near the office entrance for a taxi, her mind drifted back to her father's room, the briefcase she had always kept locked, the way he had once rested his hand on it protectively and said, "If anything ever happens to me, this holds the rest." Something else was coming, something not just about money or property, but what her father wanted her entire life to look like after all of this was over. And for the first time, Sarah felt truly ready to hear it.
The judge's gavel slammed down so hard the sound shot through the courtroom like a gunshot. "Order!" Everyone in the room jumped, except Sarah. She didn't flinch at all. She sat perfectly still at her table, hands folded calmly, eyes steady, waiting patiently for the final blow of truth and justice. Weeks had passed since the will reading. Marcus had refused to accept the outcome quietly. He challenged parts of the will in court, tried desperately to delay the asset transfers, and dragged the divorce proceedings out as long as possible, still desperately hoping he could claw something back for himself. Now here they were, the final moment. Marcus sat at the opposite table, looking nothing like the proud, confident man he once pretended to be. His suit was wrinkled and ill-fitting. His face was pale and hollow. His hands trembled visibly. Patricia sat directly behind him with a frozen expression of complete disbelief on her face. Their world was collapsing, and the courtroom felt like the only place left where truth still actually mattered. Mr. Harrison, her father's trusted lawyer, stood tall and ready beside Sarah's divorce attorney. He held a thick binder in his hands, the one containing every single piece of proof that needed to be shown to the court. The judge glanced between both tables. "We will now hear the supporting evidence regarding the divorce filing and the financial claims." Marcus swallowed hard and stood up shakily. "Your Honor, she's twisting everything. She's lying." The judge raised one hand firmly. "You will speak only when spoken to directly." Silence dropped again like a heavy curtain. Mr. Harrison opened the binder carefully. "Your Honor, what you will see today are not accusations or opinions. They are documented facts, gathered carefully by Mr. Robert Bennett himself, along with evidence collected over the past several months." He placed several large photographs onto the evidence screen for everyone to see. A collective hush swept through the entire room. Photos of Marcus with Veronica, hands intertwined intimately, kisses exchanged, late-night meetings in dark parking lots. Each photo had dates stamped clearly in the corners, dates from well before Robert passed away, while Sarah was busy taking care of her dying father. Marcus's mouth fell open in shock. "Those were taken completely out of context," he protested desperately. Mr. Harrison didn't even look at him. He simply turned the page. Next came printed text messages, full exchanges between Marcus and Veronica, plans, confessions, jokes about Sarah being too naive to suspect anything, wishes for Robert to hurry up and go so the money situation would finally improve. The courtroom gasped audibly. Marcus buried his face in both hands. Sarah sat completely still. Each revelation was painfully familiar and yet strangely distant, like she was watching the life she once lived unravel from the outside, like watching a movie about someone else. Mr. Harrison continued without hesitation. "This letter," he said, lifting a single sheet of paper carefully, "was written by Mr. Bennett just weeks before his passing." He read aloud clearly. "I am deeply concerned for my daughter's safety and future. Her husband has shown complete disregard for her well-being and speaks of me as if I were nothing more than a wallet. I fear what he will try to take from her when I am gone." Whispers spread rapidly through the room like wildfire. Patricia glared at Marcus with fury rising visibly in her eyes. The judge leaned forward with interest. "Is this testimony authenticated and verified properly?" "Yes, Your Honor. Every document has been verified." "And does the financial documentation confirm that Mr. Bennett's assets belong solely to Sarah Bennett, transferred prior to his passing?" Mr. Harrison handed the judge a thick stack of financial records. "Yes, Your Honor. Every property, every account, every investment, everything was placed in Sarah's name before Mr. Bennett died. The will confirmed any residual rights and specifically excluded Mr. Marcus Carter entirely." The judge reviewed the papers carefully, his eyebrows lifting with clear surprise. "So Marcus Carter, then," said the judge slowly, "had no legal claim whatsoever to any portion of the estate?" "Correct, Your Honor." Marcus's breath broke in a small, strangled sound. His lawyer tried desperately to speak, but the judge gave a firm nod, the kind that meant absolute finality. "Then the court recognizes the will and all financial documentation as valid and binding. The estate belongs entirely to Sarah Bennett." Sarah closed her eyes for just a moment, just long enough to feel her father's presence, long enough to breathe in the justice he had fought so quietly to give her. But the judge wasn't finished yet. "As for the divorce proceedings," he said, lifting the file, "based on the overwhelming evidence of infidelity, manipulation, and clear intent to exploit Mrs. Bennett for financial gain," he stamped the papers with a firm, echoing thud that rang through the courtroom. "The divorce is hereby granted." A sound escaped Marcus, half sob, half desperate plea. Sarah opened her eyes slowly. Everything was finally over. Mr. Harrison placed a gentle hand on her shoulder briefly before stepping back respectfully. She nodded in gratitude, her heart steady now, her breathing calm. She had stood through grief, betrayal, public humiliation, and legal battles, and she had survived it all. People in the courtroom whispered to each other, "She didn't deserve any of that. He only wanted her money. Good for her. Finally some justice." Public truth, public justice. Her father would have been so proud. Sarah stood up gracefully, collecting her purse calmly. She walked toward the exit with quiet dignity and strength. But before she reached the door, she heard frantic footsteps rushing behind her. "Sarah!" She stopped. Marcus rushed towards her, breathing hard, tears streaking down his face uncontrollably. "Sarah, please," he begged, his voice breaking completely. "Please don't leave me like this. I have nothing left, nothing." Sarah turned slowly, her expression calm and unreadable. His eyes were desperate, wild, searching frantically for the woman he once controlled and manipulated.
But the woman standing before him now was not the same person, not broken, not afraid, not his. Sarah stepped forward slightly, her voice soft but absolutely unshakable. "You chose this, Marcus." Marcus reached desperately for her arm, but before he could touch her, a firm hand grabbed his wrist and stopped him. "Mr. Harrison." "Step back," the lawyer said quietly, but with absolute authority. "You have no rights here. The court has decided." And from the corner of the room, a shadow moved, someone approaching with a document in hand, a new envelope sealed with a crest Sarah recognized too well, her father's company crest. One final truth was waiting, something her father had left behind that she hadn't seen yet.
The courthouse doors slammed open behind her with a force that made everyone nearby turn and stare. But Sarah didn't look back. She didn't need to see the chaos she was leaving behind. She didn't need to see the broken pieces of the life that had tried to destroy her. She stepped out into the bright sunlight, letting the warmth hit her face fully, like a long-awaited breath after years of being underwater. For the first time in months, maybe even years, the world felt still and peaceful. Her hands, which had been shaking through funerals, confrontations, lies, and courtroom battles, finally relaxed completely at her sides. Her heartbeat softened, her shoulders dropped, releasing the weight they had been carrying for so long. She stood there on the courthouse steps, 33 years old, freshly divorced, legally protected, and finally, truly free. Behind her, muffled voices echoed through the thick courthouse doors, angry voices, panicked voices, voices that used to control her, belittle her, shame her constantly. Not anymore. Sarah closed her eyes, and in the quiet stillness of her mind, a memory rose up, soft, warm, and steady. Her father's voice. "Strength isn't loud, Sarah. It's quiet, steady, and completely undeniable." Her lips curled into the smallest smile. He had been right about everything. She didn't need shouting or anger. She didn't need revenge through cruelty. She didn't need to win by tearing other people apart. She won by standing firm. She won by surviving. She won by listening to his final gift, the truth he had protected for her. She opened her eyes again slowly. Across the courthouse window, Marcus appeared behind the glass, pale, hollow, broken. He stood there like a man trapped in a cage of his own making, his own greed, his own lies. He had nothing now. No money, no family who believed in him anymore, no mistress to run to, and no power over her whatsoever. Patricia wasn't with him. She had stormed out earlier, screaming at him for ruining everything, for destroying their plans. Veronica had disappeared long before the judge even stamped the divorce papers, leaving Marcus mid-sentence without a second glance or backward look. He was completely alone. His eyes found Sarah through the glass window. He lifted one hand weakly, not in anger this time, but in desperate pleading. Sarah didn't move. He mouthed something silently through the glass. "Please." Another plea, one he should have made years ago when she was still fighting for their marriage, still trying to keep them together, still believing in him despite everything. But now she simply watched him in silence for a moment. She had already given him more than enough chances. Sarah turned away slowly, her hair catching the sunlight like a soft halo around her face. Her steps were slow, steady, confident. Every single one of them was a goodbye to the girl who once lived only for someone else's approval. Halfway down the courthouse steps, a gentle breeze brushed softly across her face, carrying with it a familiar warmth, almost like a hand she once held tightly. Her father's voice whispered through her memory one more time. "My daughter, never let cruelty or bitterness shrink your heart.
You were always meant for so much more than this." Sarah breathed in deeply, fully. Her father was gone. Her marriage was gone. Her fear was gone. But she was still here, stronger, clearer, unshakable. She reached the bottom step and paused briefly. Something inside her shifted, not fear, not sadness, but acceptance, pure acceptance. A new chapter was waiting for her, a life her father had built for her with love, protection, and complete trust. Sarah walked forward without looking back even once. Behind her, the courthouse door creaked open again. A familiar voice called out softly, "Sarah." Mr. Harrison's voice said gently, "When you're ready, there's one more thing your father left for you. It arrived at my office today. The documents with his company's crest on them. It's about your future, not your past." Her steps slowed slightly. One more thing. She turned her head just slightly, not enough to look back fully, just enough to let the possibility sink in deeply. Her story wasn't finished yet. Something else was waiting for her, something her father had planned carefully long before anyone else realized it. Something that would give her not just security, but purpose, not just wealth, but meaning. Sarah smiled softly to herself and continued walking forward into the sunlight. The future her father had built for her was just beginning.
I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and comment below with the lessons you've learned from Sarah's journey. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Your support means everything. Thank you for being here.